Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Gran Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Gran Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Gran Group by emailing thegran, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Gran Group with Edina Realty, three-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners. On this episode, David and Dan discuss the Twins' new signings as well as how spring training has fared thus far. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. My name is David Kufis. With me, as always, is Dan Thompson. The Twins make probably, Dan, their last pitcher signing of the 2022 offseason. Here comes Chris Archer. Dan, do you know that name?
I remember that name well, David. The Twins talked about trading for him a few years ago, and I feel like he's been very disappointing to the teams that signed him. So this is right on par, I think, for the Twins signings, right?
Yes, we will definitely get into the Archer stuff. We have some other spring training notes, a little bit of roster construction discussion, and then, Dan, we will have to circle back as my brother has offered a rebuttal to your arguments regarding his perspectives on the new extra innings rules.
Well, I'll rebut his rebuttal. Is that how that works?
I think so.
How does that work?
You get 2 minutes for rebuttal.
There you go. It's anyway, it's good old debate, good old fashioned.
We should have you both on and just hammer away at each other.
Well, he's an awfully gentle person. I'm not sure I could match his gentility on a topic with such heft as the extra inning rules.
Yeah, that's what you're telling
He would
me,
exactly.
So.
He would be the Mark Antony to my Caesar, I think, in that situation.
All right, well, let's jump into this Chris Archer trade. The deal, it's a 1-year deal, $3.5 million. This is what I love, though, Dan. So the front office, not shying away from interesting structure of deals, as shown with the Correa signing. Mm-hmm. This deal with Archer, again, 1 year, $3.5 million. Dan, did you see how much he can get above that with performance boosts? He can make up to $9.5 million.
How are they getting away with this? Because I feel like the Players Union probably doesn't want this kind of deal, right?
You wouldn't think so, but for a guy like Archer who's coming off a few, let's be honest, real bad seasons due to injury and just ineffectiveness, it's probably a great deal for him.
Oh, that's the thing. I guess in that sense, it is good for players. It's not those guaranteed deals that we're so used to seeing now that are worth, millions and millions over years and years. But I do think, maybe to counter my own point, it's the big signings that get the most press.
Yeah, 100%. So the boosters are basically for games started or outings with 9 or more outs recorded, which, my goodness, Dan, if he's not getting to 9 outs, this is going to be seen as a pretty terrible signing.
He'd be the shoemaker of this season in that situation, right?
Or the J-Hap, depending
maybe the
who you talk
to.
to.
Those guys at least ate some innings. I don't know. 9 outs doesn't count as inning eating, I don't think.
No, but I will say about this signing, if you go on Twitter, you're going to find a lot of people who are negative about this because it's the Twins are just taking a flyer on the guy. Well, yeah, they are. But have you looked at what's left for free agent pitchers? He's near the top of what is the bottom of the barrel. So I don't know how you get to the top of the bottom, but that's where Archer is.
I look at his stats, though, David, and, he hasn't really had a great year in about 9, 8, 7. Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time. When he was in his early 20s, he was in his prime. He's not been great the last couple of years.
No, it's been rough, and it's hard because anytime you're looking at statistics, especially for a pitcher, data is everything, Dan, regardless of what position you're looking at. But specifically with pitchers, everybody cares about the ground ball rate and the fastball rate versus his other pitches. But man, when you only have, last year, he only pitched 19.1 innings, Dan.
He's well rested, David.
Well, I do think that this does give him an opportunity to bounce back. Again, last season is terrible. So if we look at the last season where he had at least some numbers, so he pitched 119 innings in 2019 for the Pirates. This was a bad season, though, Dan. 5.19 ERA. He had 23 game starts. Again, 119 innings pitched. Still, it wasn't good. But to be honest, if we were looking at this guy and he had a 5.2 ERA, it's not that much worse than what the Twins have been working with the past couple seasons.
I mean, if he's the fifth starter here, what do they have to lose here? I don't mind it. Yeah, I think you're right. It's a guy who could bounce back, but gosh, I mean, look at those numbers. I mean, the last year he had a sub-4 ERA was 2015 when he was an All-Star. He was also 5th in the Cy Young Award voting. That's a long time from a prime. I'm not expecting much out of this. Are you?
I don't know, but my goodness, if he could have a sub-5 ERA, I think that's enough. I do. I think that's enough for what the Twins need him for.
It makes me think of guys like Josh Winder, who have had a pretty good spring. You wonder, when is a guy like that going to come up?
Well, as soon as Archer proves that he doesn't have it in him, Dan.
I guess so, but even last season, like, the Twins stuck with Jay Happ and Shoemaker for quite some time. I mean, Shoemaker
Longer than they
lasted
should have.
a couple months, right?
Yes.
So you would think that the Archer experiment, if the Twins are not playing well, I guess, well, I don't know, if they're playing poorly, does that actually keep him around longer?
Probably. Well, I mean, because you need to put somebody out there, and you don't want to impact, depending on the service time discussions with the new CBA agreement, it kind of comes down to which guys can you bring up without having to burn through their service time, right?
And that would fit with the way that this management likes to put together teams, where it's all about the now, and we'll worry about the future later, but we're trying not to get too committed to the future. I think that is their plan.
Yeah, so this will round out their rotation, Dan. Just to remind folks, so we have Gray, Bundy, Ryan, Ober, and now Archer. Does he just fill out that fifth spot, or where do you put him in that lineup?
I think that's probably where I put him, just in terms of his recent work. I mean, because all of those other guys, maybe the exception being Bundy, the last year they pitched better than Archer did.
I actually slot him in third, depending on how his pitching program progressed this offseason as he was waiting for a deal. So I have it as Gray, Bundy, Archer, Ryan, and then Ober.
That's some gray area at the top of the rotation there.
Oh,
see, here we go. The gray puns begin.
I'm embarrassed for the pun, and I'm embarrassed for how long it took me to get it. So real quick, folks, just so you understand. So I use fill cell with different colors very aggressively on these spreadsheets. So gray is a color on the roster construction sheet. So Dan making a gray comment, Dan.
I actually just changed it on the spreadsheet to gray, but now it throws off the system because now he looks like a non-roster invite. So
yes,
I'm going to undo that, and we'll put him back in green.
Anyway, but it's good, right? It's good not to have this question. And it's funny because as we're recording this, the signing happened like 3 hours ago. So this was a big topic of conversation, Dan, and now it kind of took care of itself.
Well, we had nothing more to talk about, David. So I think we can wrap it up here, I guess. That was the episode. Yeah. No, so we need to go. Well, do you have more to say on Chris Archer?
No, I don't. But I do want to, I just need to get this off my chest, Dan. So there is a number correction. I misunderstood what was happening. What's actually happening, Correa is going to be wearing number 4, which was Royce Lewis' number. And so now Lewis will be wearing 23. So I got confused.
Had that flipped around.
Correct. I had that Correa would be wearing 23, but actually that's what Lewis is going to be wearing instead of 4, which is what Correa will be wearing.
The other thing that Correa did when he arrived, other than put on a jersey, is he talked the big talk. He talked about building a championship culture. What does that mean?
Especially for a guy who is likely to only be here for 1 year.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have bugged me as much as it did, because he has to say that, right? Like, what's he supposed to say? Yeah, I'm just hoping to have a big year here. I don't really care what we do. Mm-hmm. But see, I guess maybe I should take that back. That's not exactly what I mean, right? I don't think that Correa is like, oh man, I don't really care what happens to this team. Because ask any professional athlete, would you like to win a championship or not? Like, of course, they're going to want to win a championship. However, this big talk about making a championship culture over his time here and it being a long-term deal, well, only if the Twins are going to shell out $500 million next year on a 30-year deal for him.
Is there an element of that that's a little condescending to you? Surely there are players on this team, and I know we can make our jokes how the Twins haven't won, playoff games in our lifetimes, seemingly. But, like, they are a good team. Like, they've been a good team. Obviously last year wasn't great, but they've been more often a playoff team the last few years than they haven't been.
Correct. And, like, granted, their competition in the Central is probably going to be a bit more fierce this year. I mean, the Tigers weren't quiet this offseason by any stretch. And so, really, you do have to look out for those Tigers on top of, obviously, the favorite White Sox to win the division.
Well, any other trades, acquisitions here?
The only other thing to note is Garza Jr., who was on the mound for the Twins a little bit last season, did get claimed by the Red Sox, so he is no longer an option as a reliever for the Twins. And then there were a couple other roster moves, but nothing that was going to surprise anybody. So just guys moving to the minors or off the 40-man. The only real surprise was Thorpe was outrighted to AAA, and he was not claimed by anyone in order to make room for Archer. So that's a little bit of a sad day for Thorpe, I guess.
We had such high hopes for Lewis Thorpe over the years as a lefty with some fire, and he just hasn't panned out. So
yeah, well, speaking of guys who we thought were going to be starters, Dan, looks like Duran, who's been a a touted prospect for the Twins. Looks like they may move him to the bullpen in order that he may be effective this season.
Well, when you can throw 100 miles an hour, I just think your spot is probably better in the bullpen, because how many starters can really do that over the long haul of even a game?
I don't know exactly the ins and outs of how it works when you push a guy into that bullpen role. How much effort does it take to try and revert him back into the starting role?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how much I'd like a team doing that anyway, right?
No.
Like the idea of putting him into a bullpen role knowing that you want him to come back as a starter later.
Yeah, I think once you're a bullpen guy, you're kind of a bullpen guy, right? Like that.
Yeah.
People don't come back from that. And you remember he's the guy that the Twins got back from the Eduardo Escobar deal in 2018.
Yeah, that was
an all-star Eduardo Escobar. So got to think they'd rather have Escobar than a guy but maybe we'll see. This is kind of the year we'll get to see whether that trade really worked out or not.
Yeah, the other note, it seems unlikely that Miranda is going to break camp with the club. I think it's possible, but they're going to want to get him at bats every day, and he will not get that at the major league level.
No, because there's a crowd in the infield that I don't quite understand how they're going to settle. So I want to see him do a little bit more at AAA. But I have other questions about the other guys like Brent Rooker, Trevor Larnach, Nick Gordon. I mean, where are they going to put these guys, and how are they going to fit them all together onto this roster? Gilberto Celestino, has he got a spot potentially still on this lineup?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Because really, now that the rotation is filled out, there's really 2 question marks. There's 3 bench spots remaining as far as position players are concerned, and then there's likely 5 reliever spots. Who gets those spots, Dan? I don't honestly know. I don't know what way I'm leaning here. I don't know let's get into that a little bit here. Who right now do you have as your bench position players?
I do like Larnach. I like having him in there, and he's had a pretty good spring camp. I think it's Godoy, because I think why else would you bring him in? He's a left-handed catcher. And then, last time, David, we talked about Jake Cave. And I don't know anymore. If he's a non-roster invite, I'm just not sure that seems like you're kind of giving up on the man, aren't you?
Because nobody else signed him. Nobody else signed him, Dan. So it's not like you got a lot of suitors knocking on Jake Cave's door here.
I don't know. I don't want Jake Cave on this roster. I don't know that I want Tim Beckham on this roster either, but there he is.
Well, and Kyle Garlick. Don't forget about the Italian
I've kind of
himself.
forgotten about Kyle Garlick, I think. I don't know. Who would you pick of those position guys?
I think you're right. I think it's Larnach. I think it's Godoy. And then probably Celestino, because you need to have a good outfield option who can play center field if Buxton goes down.
I think they keep Gordon, and I think they let Celestino play a little bit more in center. And then when inevitably they need Celestino to play outfield because Nick Gordon hasn't done very well there and I hope he does, but I think, invariably they're probably going to want a true center fielder. I think then that's when we see Celestino come up, when maybe somebody else is hurt.
So then you have on your bench then Gordon, Larnach, and Godoy.
That's what I would do.
I have Sanchez on the bench currently, but that was just the first thing I penciled in. So
I would agree. So I think, would you say Celestino still, even after my very good point about...
No, you made a fair point here, but I think if they bring Celestino, I think Larnach stays in the minors and Gordon is probably up. Okay, so and then we have the rotation locks. So then it's the relievers, Dan. And again, reliever locks, unfortunately, at this point, there's only 5 of them as far as I can tell. So you have Rogers, Thielbar, Smith, Duffy, and Alcala.
It's so hard to make these predictions out of camp, because if a guy looks good in camp, it might be because he's doing one thing. I don't know. It's very hard to read... In the same way that we can't really read the standings in Grapefruit League ball. What are we supposed to do?
Thank goodness for the Twins' sake.
Well, I know, but what are we supposed to do with stats? And I realize I'm going to make a stats point here and after a little bit, but I just question that. I'm going to trust Rocco and his coach's decisions here on what to do with these starting pitchers and these relief pitchers, because I just have no idea.
Yeah, I think. Well, again, it needs to be noted that rosters start at 28 at the beginning of the season, and it's likely, I would think, the reason why I only put 4 bench spots is because the Twins likely want to carry 10 relievers. Would be my thought. Maybe I'm wrong about that, and they give a 5th bench spot. That seems ridiculous.
No, I think that they go as many relievers as possible, because that's what they got to figure out. They got to figure out who can pitch in the major leagues here.
Yeah, and there's no limit to the number of pitchers for the start of the season.
Well, good for them. I bet we see some Griffin Jacks then too. What the heck? Let's go with some Jacks and Ober combos again. Wouldn't that be great?
Yes, but I'm thinking, if I gut feeling right now, Stashak, Romero, Cotton, and Jacks are probably for sure 4 that are going to break with the club.
Yeah, I think you're probably right there. And I'm still waiting for my Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego parallel with Stashak. So where's the Abednego relief pitcher out there? I'm sure they can find one. Somebody's got to have that name.
Do you get worried looking at this lineup, Dan, the sort of lack of depth, specifically at center field and shortstop?
That's not my primary worry with this team right now, David. I think depth in the positions is not the concern. I just have so much more concern about the relievers. I mean, are you concerned about? Because I thought I braised this last week, and then you kind of dismissed it, like there were no other questions about position players.
No,
And now you're saying it. Now you're saying the thing that I said last week.
I don't think so. I'll have to go listen back, but that doesn't sound like me,
That
Dan.
sounds like what it was. All right, go ahead. Go ahead with your point.
But it worries me about shortstop. Let's say Correa goes down. Then you can either shift Polanco over. You have Urshela could play some shortstop. And you have Arise, who, again, that'd be the last option probably. Gordon maybe a little bit. I just worry a little bit what happens to the makeup of the infield if a shortstop goes down. Specifically if Correa goes down.
They don't have a backup plan until Royce Lewis is healthy. So I think Royce Lewis is the backup plan, and they hope that they don't need him this season.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, oof. I don't know how much else we can say about the roster, Dan. At this point, it's all speculation, and how many times have we been proven wrong?
Many. And, we'll find out next week when they actually have to start playing baseball games for real.
A quick thing here. I don't know if you saw this article, Dan, on the different tiers of teams in the MLB this season.
Mm-hmm. I felt it was about right with the Twins. Don't you?
Oh, no. No.
Yeah, I think that's about right. All right, so I'm going to explain it because you brought it up. So they had 8 tiers. They had, and I think our listeners would probably guess who's in the top tier, and it's just the Dodgers by themselves. Then there's a long second tier with the trash cans, the Blue Jays, the Braves, the Mets, the Rays, and the White Sox, and the Yankees. That's a big tier. Then the third tier is the Brewers, the Padres, the Phillies, and the Red Sox. I question that with Tatis not playing for a few months at least. And then the fourth tier is the Giants by themselves, and then the Angels, Cardinals, Twins. You don't think that's where the Twins belong?
I think that they're at the 3.5 tier.
You can't do that. Then that's the fourth tier.
Yes, they should be at least at the fourth tier then. So Brewers, Padres, Phillies, Red Sox, then Giants and Twins. Because I put the Twins over the Cardinals and the Angels, no problem.
See, I don't. I thought that their rationale was good. This Twins team won 73 games last year, David. And so
but you're
the
telling
fifth
me
tier
that
was like right around 500.
But do you truly think that last season was a good predictor for what this season will be?
In the sense that, are they going to win 20 more games than last year with this roster? That's a huge ask at this point because it's not.
Well, they're not going to make the postseason if they don't, Dan.
I know, so I don't think they're going to make the postseason right now. I don't see this being a postseason team.
A little foreshadowing, folks, for our season prediction show, I guess.
Do you really think they're a postseason team? I just don't see it.
I think
when I look at the rest of the AL.
I mean, my gut says no, but my heart says yes.
I mean, I would even put the Mariners up there with the Twins in that sense.
I see them being a wild card team from the Central Division.
Well, that's because there's 12 wild cards now. I mean, everybody's a wild card.
That's true.
It's like an Oprah
That's
show.
interesting. You don't think they're going to make the postseason?
Not right now.
You do a podcast about the Twins.
It doesn't mean I'm a homer. It means that I enjoy watching Twins baseball.
Oh, man.
But maybe my glasses right now are so wild green colored right now that maybe that'll change, once I start watching some actual baseball games with Byron Buxton out there. I do love him.
Let's keep moving, Dan.
I have one other thing, David, to talk about with this roster before we move on. So I think for the first time, because obviously Nelson Cruz is on the team for the last couple of years, I think this is the first time maybe ever, David, that I'm older than every Twins player on the roster right now.
Oof.
Joe Smith.
I'm sorry, Dan.
The reliever who's played for the journeyman reliever who's going for 2 million appearances or something like that?
I think it's 1,000.
Oh
sure.
My gosh. He was born about 3 months after I was. And that makes me feel so old. David, growing up, these Twins were people that I could aspire to be like. Even though I had very little athletic ability, I could kind of turn a double play in 5th grade. I was Carlos Correa on my team in that
Certainly.
sense. And now those days are behind me. I have to admit that.
Well, Dan, I'm sorry for your loss. I don't know what else to say.
Because you still have that hope, right? You can look to Joe Smith and say, someday
I can still be on that mound.
Yeah, it's like The Rookie, right? The Dennis Quaid film. You can still do that. I can't look at that and say I'm not Dennis Quaid.
Maybe, Dan, you just need to shift your aspirations to no longer being the guy on the mound, and maybe you're the guy on the tee box.
Maybe.
Golf is one of those sports that everybody's pretty convinced that they could do it eventually.
But I'm really bad at golf, David. I don't know. I don't think there's hope.
Do you play a lot of pickleball, Dan?
I could pickleball, right?
Yeah,
Did
they
even say that right? Maybe spike ball. Maybe Foursquare, right? Can I still play Foursquare? I love Foursquare.
I think that's dominated by the 4th to 6th grade girls. Dan.
I tell you, but what a game! All right, let's move on here to other notes. I had I have one spring training note that I want to bring up after I have slammed the usefulness of spring statistics. Miguel Sano, as of earlier today, had 18 at bats. Do you want to guess how many strikeouts he had, David?
Well, I've seen the stats, so okay. I feel bad guessing.
Well, he has 10 in 18, and I'm worried about this. Aren't you worried about this?
The optimism that I once held for Miguel Sano, Dan, has been well tarnished.
When did you hold that optimism?
2017, maybe.
So like when Chris Archer last had a decent year? Like is that the optimism we're basing this on?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Okay.
If Miguel Sano is playing well, this team is being competitive. I don't think he's the linchpin, but I think he's probably a guy who feeds off other success.
He didn't do anything like step on a nail in his chicken coop or anything, did he? This offseason?
No, so I'm guessing we'll get a text alert pretty quick here about how a railing fell broken in his hotel and he broke his left arm.
So we hope nothing bad happens to Miguel, but you're right. This is kind of when the thing happens. And then he's out until June and then he's not with it. And it's just, anyway. So I had that thought.
Yeah. And truly, honestly, if Sano proves himself to be not improved on what he was last season, it's a pretty easy switch for the Twins to make because they have a lot of corner outfield options and you just move Kirilloff to first base. No problem.
That's true, actually. I would love to see Sano play well, but he really has been part of this Twins team. He has been a relevant part of a discussion. If we were doing a podcast 10 years ago, David, we would have been talking about Miguel Sano then.
Yeah, as an up-and-coming prospect.
Totally, that's what I mean. Like he's been tied to Byron Buxton for a decade. And I don't think we're going to see a 7-year, $100 million deal coming anytime soon for Miguel Sano.
Only if somebody got hit in the head first, Dan.
All right. Well, David, we have a couple other things to talk about with the rule discussions here.
Let's start with the small one about the article you sent me. And Dan, I got to be honest with you. I read it. I just don't care.
You don't care? David.
No, not even a little bit.
This is huge. All right. So I will talk about it. So Jason Stark, who, let me tell you, if there's one baseball writer who uses exclamation points, it's Jason Stark. And he uses them too much.
He is very good, though. He is very,
he's
I said,
excellent.
I read the article. He's great. I love a lot of what he writes. But this article just didn't do it for me. It was the topic, not the prose. Right?
Okay. I'm going to try to explain the graph that he had in there, the chart that I didn't realize. So, listeners, if you can picture a baseball diamond and you can picture like graphing it out on a piece of graph paper. So as it is now, third and first base are kind of in the corners of the diamond, right? Or the square, technically, right? Are you with me, David?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so then as those points go up towards second base, they meet at the middle of the base, right? It's not that the base nestles into that corner. Like this part alone didn't blow your mind?
No.
No?
I mean, yeah, I didn't know it. I won't pretend like I knew that, but I'm not going to pretend like I care.
But I think this is more significant because then we were talking a couple episodes about how, they're making the bases bigger and we didn't care. Well, this is part of the reason was, okay, so then, but what they're going to do in the minors in the second half of the season is they're going to move the base down so it actually fits into the corner of the square.
Yes, which will make everybody who watches the logo on their DVD players hit the exact corner
but hold
on the TV screen.
But this is why. Because now in all those moments, when somebody tries to steal second and then we see those replays and there's a hand that's sliding in and it just doesn't quite touch the base before the fielder swipes his hand across the base stealer's arm. You remember these moments, David?
Yeah, I've seen.
They're going to be safe.
Yes, Dan.
They're going to be safe every time now because of that. And that's so interesting. Like, I really think we're going to see more stolen bases now.
Yeah.
Because of that extra, that foot. It's like a foot closer now to first base.
I agree with you. And especially with, watching those stopwatches and pitchers' time to home is going to matter a little bit more. Certainly.
This is huge, David. Huge news. And this has been swept under the rug of the collective bargaining agreement, changing all these other rules just on the fly. And baseball's just hoping we're not going to notice, David.
What?
But I'm noticing.
I'm just confused why they would care if we notice or not so much, Dan.
Because this,
just so I understand your perspective, you think baseball's trying to pull a fast one on us by moving second base?
Quite literally, pull a fast one because they're now trying to get more stolen bases into the game, and they didn't tell us until like a source leaked it to Jason Stark. I just think this is big news, and you're poo-pooing it. The inches matter in baseball, David.
Yes, it does. It certainly does, Dan. I'm not denying that this could have a slight impact on the game. I'm a little bit less conspiratorial than you are, I guess, in the major league attempt to sabotage catcher's ability to throw runners out at second, though.
Well, I didn't use the S word, but like I think there's a conspiracy here. They're conspiring to conspire, right? Like the great line from Traffic. I think that's what's happening, David.
Okay, well, moving. Do you have any other
No, I
thoughts
don't.
on this?
But I'm
Dan?
waiting for you're going to have more thoughts on this in a couple months. I know it. I know it.
Okay, sure.
All right.
I will. I'll
All right,
put it in my
we got to move on.
calendar
We
here.
got to. I'm stalling here a little bit. I'm bearing the
Yes.
lead, but you got to talk about
Yes.
this next one.
Okay, so folks, if you tuned in last episode, we were at that point made aware that the new CBA allows for a runner to start on second base at the beginning of extra innings. So the extra innings rule that we saw in effect last season that we all hated has returned. My brother, again, not a ball guy, had made the suggestion that we, instead of putting a runner on second, we lower the amount of balls it takes to draw a walk from 4 to 3. I thought this was an interesting idea, and I thought, hey, I'll bring it up on the podcast. Dan Thompson had a meltdown explaining how this was the worst suggestion in the history of sports, and how instead we should remove fielders from the field, and how a runner on second is far more natural. And I personally was a bit surprised. I thought Dan would take a little bit more reasoned approach to my brother's discussion. The reason I keep saying my brother is because my brother's name is Dan also.
Sure,
So
yeah.
we're going to stick with brother just for the ease of the listener's experience here. But my brother, not a ball guy. However, diligent, very loyal listeners to the podcast, he took a bit of offense at Dan Thompson's response, and he offered a few rebuttals to your arguments, Dan, that I think it's important that we give proper time to.
My gosh. Okay, first of all, before we get to his rebuttal of my comment of my initial rebuttal to him, I was not given any notice about this drastic change he was proposing.
It
So
was in the
I was
notes.
coming up with things off the top of my head, but I didn't quite grasp like the seriousness with which he was presenting it.
So Dan's first point of contention was that lowering the ball count to 3 takes away an entire strategy. My brother's response was, doesn't putting a runner on second also take away an entire strategy? He says, I'm guessing you're going to pitch the same batter significantly differently if there's a runner in scoring position. Also, putting a runner on second forces a pitcher to adjust his mindset as well as how he throws the ball, such as out of the stretch as opposed to a full windup.
All right, continue. Let's give him his full floor here.
Oh, no. I want you to
want
hear
me to
your
rebut that
response
one?
to that one. Yeah, please.
Okay, so here's what I would say. If you're going to lower the ball count to 3, you should also lower the strike count to 2.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Why not?
Because I think that you need to give a little bit of leeway for foul balls.
No, you can I would say you can keep fouling balls off at that point. Because this was
No,
proposed.
I agree, but you have more leeway going from 4 to 3 than you do from 3 to 2, certainly. Because if you foul one pitch off, then you're in trouble there.
So that the goal is not so much to speed up the game as to end the game, is what you're saying.
No, it is to speed up the game, and it certainly will because it's going to force the pitcher to throw strikes
Ah.
more often than he would.
I think it takes away more strategy to lower the ball count to 3 than it does to put a runner at second. A runner at second is like a normal thing that happens in baseball, right? Like a guy gets a leadoff double. Oh, there's a runner at second. Like that's a normal situation. What he's proposing is a radical change.
To be fair, I would say that the only way it's more radical than a runner on second, this is your strongest argument, saying that it's a change to the base rules of baseball. That is the only argument that honestly I think holds any water, but I think it's still less of a shift as far as game outcome than putting a runner on second. But anyway, that leads us into the second point real quick.
It does.
So Dan's point was, it changes the balance of strikes and balls. And my brother wrote, yes, it does. That's the point.
That was one where I was scrambling. Like I feel like he took I didn't have time to think that through. Yes, I know it changes the balance of balls and strikes.
This next point, definitely my favorite.
All right.
Dan Thompson said, he changes the ball count when he plays with his kids. And my brother wrote, what I'm hearing is, yes, this is effective and produces the desired result.
I know, but like that is not the same as playing with my children. Like sometimes I give them extra strikes. I don't give them like fewer balls per se. I extend at bats rather than shortening them with my children. They might be allowed to give me extra balls, but we don't actually shorten. We extend. If anything, we extend at bats rather than shorten them.
I would argue that even doesn't even belong in the discussion that we're talking about.
Again, I was bringing things up.
So my brother, this is his last point. It's a little bit more involved, but I do want to read it just to give him his full due here. Dan Thompson says that changing the ball count is more significant than putting a runner on second. My brother writes, hard disagree. Changing the count still forces the offense to be productive. You still need to produce something with a runner on second, but like David said, a bunt and a sac fly gets it done. And my brother says, I obviously don't have statistics, but I'd be willing to put some money on the fact that if you played 100 innings starting with a runner on second and 100 innings with a lowered ball count, more runs would be scored during the innings with a runner on second, making my idea less significant while still accomplishing what it sets out to do.
So this is I appreciate how he put this together. I'm interested in seeing how would this play out in a minor league system, right? This is what's so great about baseball having all these minor leagues is they can try these things out. I do think, though, still that changing the ball count is more significant than putting a runner in second because of what you just pointed out and made my point for me, is that it is a fundamental change to the rules. It's not a situational change like putting a runner in second. It's artificial to put a runner at second, but the game proceeds in a normal manner. And I think it's significant to lower the ball count.
It is, but I still like it more than the runner on second.
See, that's where you're wrong. All right. And then you should go, his one other argument he thought of was the drastic argument, because I did appreciate this.
He argues, again, my brother is not a big sports guy, but he's much smarter than I. Okay, like
absolutely. I met him. He's a great guy. Very smart.
Nobody will disagree with that. Certainly, if they've met us both. But so he's pretty thoughtful about things. Where I just talk, right, gets me in all kinds of trouble. Speaking of,
makes for a great podcast
me,
too.
He already told me that he has a couple of David Dumbs lined up. That he's got them in the barrel, which isn't good, Dan. We're on podcast number 3, and he's already got David's Dumbs.
Well, keep going because maybe you'll give him more.
Well, no, this is my brother's. Okay, anyway. So my brother wrote, "This is significantly less drastic than what other sports do. Can you imagine if baseball did what the NFL does? If the away team scores a run in the 10th, they automatically win. Or the NHL. We play an inning where we take away the shortstop, and if it's still tied, we do a home run derby to determine the winner."
I really like the hockey comparison there. Isn't that brilliant?
Yes, and then he did write, in case you're curious, he wrote side note, "The NFL should play a regular 15-minute period for overtime, but first downs are 8 yards instead of 10.
But that actually, again, is just the kind of change that he's talking about that I think is more significant. I don't mind the 15 minutes. It's changing the first down length. They'd have to change chains. There's all kinds of things that would be very difficult logistically.
Yeah, that'd be real difficult because everybody knows how difficult it is to change the length of chains.
Well, what would the TV do with the line? Can they move the yellow line? I don't know that that's possible.
Yeah, it's not the 80s. There's not a guy with a highlighter marking it and then erasing it from the screen.
I would still take my remove a fielder system. I think that's more fun. So we can try these things out in the minor leagues and we'll see which one is faster.
And he did write, "I like Dan Thompson too, and he obviously knows baseball way better than I do, but I would love to see my idea tested somewhere to see the results and prove him wrong."
That is very kind of him. And to be fair, I tried to do some research on this, and the only thing I could find was that I think this was proposed to not make the full change that he's talking about, but to lower the balls and the strikes. That's where I got that idea, to 3 and 2. I think that was proposed just to speed up games, and that was a while ago. I don't think it ever actually went into practice. I'm all for it. I guess to sum up this argument, I am all for the way that baseball is trying to propose different ways and use its minor league system as a little bit of a testing ground, because I think that is good for the sport to be able to change in those ways. I don't like the word evolve in that sense, but to try to make the game more attractive. But there's also that purity piece that we have to balance. Like, at what point is it not baseball anymore?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, that's sort of the crux of the matter is, are you willing to sacrifice what are sort of rules that are set in stone to eliminate a certain artificial nature of giving these ghost runners on second?
And again, I would say back to my fundamental first argument was, let's only add the runner to second after a couple innings have been played, because I do think that saving pitchers' arms is better for baseball than playing 19-inning games and then having teams have to adjust for an entire week. And I know you disagree. So
I do, but it's okay. This has been a fun exercise regardless. And yes, clearly nobody is listening to this who can have any impact on these sorts of decisions. But I am quite thrilled that my brother put the effort in to respond to your hostility last episode.
I love it. And you keep calling it hostility. I was just reacting, David. That's just how I react. Apparently it's hostile. I got to work on that, I guess.
It was quite sarcastic and a bit condescending. I think that's probably
I was not trying to be... Well, I'm sorry, Brother Dan. I didn't mean to be condescending. I appreciate the thought. It was a great email. It was the best email I got that day.
Okay. Well, I think, Dan, I don't have any other notes here. Should I send us out?
You please do.
Well, folks, if you like what you hear, please tell a friend. You can follow us on Twitter at Min for the Win and find our Min for the Win Facebook page. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast to be notified when new episodes are available. And if you could leave us a rating, that'd be great. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.